Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining us for our January Reverse Book Club with Wesley Croft. He is going to go over a very well-known book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. So this is also the perfect book for January as we are all starting to think about ways to improve upon ourselves. So without further ado, Wesley, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Julia. So good to be with you guys today. So a little bit of an intimidating book, really, if you think about it, for those of you that have read it. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to go out right now and borrow it from the library, find a friend that has it. There's actually ways you can read it for free online if you know where to look. So please avail yourself of this amazing book, and it's really a privilege to be able to walk you guys through it. Without further ado, we'll dive right in. For those of you that don't know anything about Atomic Habits, this will be a really great time for you. So chapter 1 starts out sort of an introduction of habits in general, right? So I've written you guys some notes here for chapter 1, and obviously after this, I can share my email in the chat, and I can send this slide deck to you. I'm happy to do that.
Just real quick, you had it in presenter mode before, and now it is showing the full program. I just wanted to let you know that if you didn't see how we saw
that's
it.
okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep. Perfect. Thanks. Well, now I can't see it because, so anyway, technical difficulties over here today. It's all good. Let me, you know what? It's okay. I'll just leave it like this.
Just leave it like that. That's fine. I just wanted to know if you knew. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So chapter 1. So there's a lot of talk about habits, especially in real estate. And I'll try to bring this back to real estate as much as I can as we move through this. But chapter 1, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Getting 1% better every day counts for a lot in the long run. And I really can't overstate this point, right? This whole idea of getting 1% better every day, it's all about compounding effect, right? Which we'll talk about. Actually, the very next point is small changes appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold. The most powerful outcomes of any compounding process are delayed. You need to be patient. And I think there's this, we live in a society where, hey, everything's got to be really quick, really fast. We got to get to the result that we want, like today. And it's just not that way, especially when it comes to building habits that lead to success. Right. So as we're creating small, tiny habits and getting 1% better every day, there's a level of patience that's involved in that. One of the craziest things that he mentions, and he mentions it in the first chapter here, he talks about this idea. He says, if you want better results, then forget about setting goals and focus on your system instead, which I thought was really interesting because, in this business, we talk a lot about goal setting, right? Okay, so what do you want your GCI to be this year, and how do you want to get there, and so on and so forth. We talk about that a lot in business planning, but sometimes, not at this brokerage, but I've seen a lot of other coaches and a lot of other people will stop at goal setting. They'll say, okay, like, what do you want your goal to be? Okay, you want to make, $150,000 next year. That's awesome. Cool. Well, do the things that you think you need to do to be successful, but there's no plan involved. There's a system that's put together. And I see a lot of you guys on here that I've known for a long time and that have been in the business for a long time. And I know you guys would agree with me that if you don't have the right systems in place in your real estate business, you're not going to succeed, right? It's just not going to happen, right? And one of the things, I've actually got it written up on my board of quotes over here, is this very quote that I wrote here at the bottom for you, is that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you don't have great systems in place, be that either habits that you continually do every single day, or systems around, let's say, lead generation, or systems around contract to close, any sort of system that you can create in real estate will help you get 1% better every day, and it will lead you to your goal. But if you don't have great systems, you can have all the awesome goals that you want, you're not going to get there, right? So that's sort of his introductory chapter. What's really interesting and where it gets really, really interesting is in chapter 2. He talks about how your habits shape your identity and vice versa. So the most effective way to change your habits is to focus not on what you want to achieve, but on who you wish to become. So I've used this a ton in my coaching sessions with some of my coaching clients, and what he says in the book is really interesting. The story that he uses is, he says, what if, you and your best friend are habitual smokers, right? You smoke 2 packs a day, and all of a sudden you both agree, like, hey, we don't want to smoke anymore. Okay. Well, let's say you're at a party and someone walks up to the two of you and they said, hey, I have a cigarette. You want one? Now, one of you says, no, I'm trying to quit. The other person says, no, I'm not a smoker. What's the difference there, right? One of them has already self-identified as a smoker that's trying to quit. The other one says, no, I'm not a smoker. Like, that's not my identity, right? And if I'm not a smoker, I don't smoke. Like, that's just not something that I do. So the second point that I have on here is your identity emerges out of your habits. Every action is a vote for the type of person you want to become. So the other thing that he says in the book that's really super interesting is this whole concept of weight loss. So if we want to lose weight, we have to decide that we want to become a healthy person. So then you think about what healthy people do, right? So do healthy people go eat an entire plate of cookies? No, right? So when a plate of cookies is presented to them, their immediate thought is, okay, what would a healthy person do in this situation? Would a healthy person eat all the cookies, or would a healthy person abstain? So it's all about the person that you're trying to become. So think about this in real estate. For those of us that have been in real estate for a while and have done Bold says that there are the job description of a real estate agent is 5 things, right? What are those 5 things? So lead generate, lead follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts, script and role play, and education, right? So if we want to become a successful agent, if that's what successful agents do, are those 5 things, there should never be a time when we come into the office and we sit down and we think, oh my gosh, what should I do right now? No, think like a successful real estate agent if that's what you want to become. So you sit down at your desk and you say, okay, what are the things that successful real estate agents do? First of all, they lead generate. Everything else flows off of lead generation, right? So if I don't have anything to do, I at least know that I can lead generate or follow up with leads that I've already generated. So in order to create new habits, we need to try to figure out who we are, who we want to become, and then use that to propel us to action. And the last thing I have written on here is the real reason habits matter is not because they get you better results, although they can do that, but because they can change your beliefs about yourself. So then the question is raised, well, how do we create better habits, right? How do you build them? So chapter 3 talks a little bit about this. So how to build better habits in 4 simple steps. So what's a habit? A habit is behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. So habits that we all know would be, brushing your teeth every day, taking a shower every day, those sorts of things. The ultimate purpose of habits is to solve problems of life with as little energy and effort as possible. Right. So we're going to talk a little bit later on in the book about the 2-minute rule and how every single habit that you have in your life should be pared down to take no longer than 2 minutes. And the ultimate purpose is to solve the little problems of life. So, brushing your teeth, right? What's the problem that you're solving, right? You have dirty, nasty teeth and you don't want them to rot away. So the habit of brushing your teeth is to solve the problem of not wanting tooth decay, right? Any habit can be broken down into a feedback loop that involves 4 steps. So there's always a cue to any habit that we have, and those cues can be environmental. It can be based on what the time of day. those sorts of things, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So cue, craving, response, and reward. And so I want to spend the bulk of my time today talking about the 4 laws of behavior change, which I've listed here. So make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And we'll go through all of those as we move through. So chapter 4, it was entitled "The Man Who Didn't Look Right." The reason why it was entitled this way is because at the beginning, James Clear talks about a story that he had heard from a psychologist that this particular individual was like just walking down the hallway by his daughter, and his daughter looks at him and says, you don't look right. And the dad, being funny, forget you, like that's a rude comment. Why would you say that? And turns out that the man was in the middle of I can't remember if it was I think it was a heart attack. And so in the middle of a heart attack, your blood moves to different parts of your body. And so it made him look differently, right? But the only way that she knew that was because she had the habit of, seeing her dad every single day and knew, hey, I'm looking at you right now, and there's something vastly different about what's going on. It's the same thing with tellers at a bank. Like I used to work in banking years ago, and what they would say is the best way to look and see a counterfeit bill is not to study what counterfeit bills look like. It's to handle the real thing over and over and over and over and over again. So the first thing he says here is once our habits become automatic, we stop paying attention to what we're doing, right? So the process of behavior change always starts with awareness, and you need to be aware of your habits before you can change them. So a lot of us have gotten into bad habits before and are still in bad habits right now. So what the author would say is we need to figure out how to track these bad habits first before we can ever start making changes. So he uses this idea of pointing and calling, right? He tells the story of the Japanese a Japanese train station, and how they have this really peculiar way of making their pre-departure checks. So they literally call out every single thing, like things that you think would be like normal. Hey, the light's green, the door's closed, like those sorts of things. They actually verbally call them out. And so what he says is by pointing and calling, it raises our level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a more conscious level by just verbalizing our actions. So one of the analogies that he uses is if you are wanting to be more healthy and you see the plate of cookies, when you go to grab a second cookie, to say, hey, I'm grabbing this cookie, I'm going to eat it. By eating it, it will make me a less healthy person. If we verbalize that instead of just taking the normal cues of, hey, I'm still hungry, or the craving of, hey, I still want more chocolate, and just grabbing it and eating it, if we verbalize that, it helps us to realize that's not a good habit that we want to be continuing to feed. So he says, basically make a habit scorecard for yourself. So a habit scorecard would be, so literally take your morning routine and write down everything that you do. So, get out of bed, check my smartphone, take a shower, shave, put on deodorant, brush my teeth, hang my towel up, get dressed, make coffee, right? Literally write all those down, everything that you do, and then write a plus, a minus, or an equal sign beside it. So a plus would be it's a good habit, a minus is a bad habit, and equal sign is just a neutral habit. And do that over a period of time, let's say for a week, so you can really nail down what you're already doing so that you can start to track those things and realize, okay, what is going on? What environment am I in? Why am I doing those things at those particular times, and so on and so forth. Now, what he would say is he moves into chapter 5 and he talks about the best way to start a new habit. So once you've got all these habits down, right, you start to begin to understand exactly what good habits are, what bad habits are. And then now we can track them so that we know, what's good and what's bad. So the best way to start a new habit. So the first law of behavior change is to make it obvious. And he talks a lot about cues, and he says the two most common cues are time and location. So if we think back to what he's already talked about, in chapter 4, where he talks about awareness, now we can start to paint a better picture, right? So at a certain time and in a certain location, we do a certain thing, right? So maybe it's, at 6 o'clock in the morning in my bed, I wake up and I grab my smartphone. Now, we don't need to go into all of this today, but I'm sure all of you have talked about and heard about this whole idea of not grabbing your smartphone right at the beginning of your day and actually doing something productive in the morning, whether that be meditation or whatever the case may be. But I would say for me, grabbing my smartphone right when I wake up is a bad habit. So if I want to change that, if I want to start a different habit, I need to have a new formula for what I use. And so I've written that down here for you. It's, I will do a certain thing at a certain time in a certain location. So I will get up out of my bed at 6 a.m. And that's my new habit, not I will wake up and then grab my smartphone. That's not what I want to do. And so then there's this idea of habit stacking. So you pair a new habit with a current one. So the habit stacking formula is, after a current habit, I'll do a new thing. So after I wake up, I will get up out of my bed, right? So that would be a habit stacking sort of thing. So that's one of the things I forgot to mention is on all of these laws of behavior changes, he is going to give us an inverse of that after a couple of chapters. So what's great about this is, first law of behavior changes, make it obvious. So think through your habit tracking, your habit scorecard list, and start to look at the most common clues of time and location and figure out, okay, if I want to start a new habit and I want to cue it off of a certain thing, what am I already doing that could help me just stack a new habit on top of that? So what we're going to find eventually is that what he'll say is, the more habits you can stack that are positive, the less you have to start to think about those particular habits. So the best way to start a new habit, first law of behavior change, make it obvious. Find the different cues that trigger a certain habit in you. The only way that you're going to do that, like we said, is going back to chapter 4, is to start a habits scorecard and to find ways to make those new habits obvious to you. Now, chapter 6, we've talked about this a little bit already, is your environment, right? So motivation is overrated. Environment often matters way more. So small changes in context can lead to large changes in behavior over time. Every habit is initiated by a cue. We are more likely to notice cues that stand out. Make the cues of good habits obvious in your environment. Now, what he's going to say in a minute about the inverse of this is that, negative habits, I think it's down here, is make it invisible. So we're going to talk a little bit about self-control, and I think you'll find that super interesting. But gradually, your habits are going to become associated not with a single trigger, but with the entire context surrounding the behavior, right? The context is going to become the cue. So for example, in real estate, if we want to make good habits, let's say around lead generation, right? We've all heard this idea of creating a bunker, right? So maybe creating the bunker is your new habit. So you walk in the office and you create a chain reaction of habits. So let's say you walk into the office and the first thing that you do is you have a door hanger that's created on the back side of your door. When you walk in the morning, you take that door hanger off and you put it on the front of your door and you close the door, right? That's a habit that you start. As soon as you walk in, you open up your computer and you pull up your CRM or whatever it is that you use for lead generation, and you maybe put your phone on the stand next to you, put your headphones in. Like, all these things are habits that you can stack up so that when you walk into the office, your context becomes your cue to what you need to do next. So as soon as you walk into the office, everything starts to trigger in your brain. I'm going to walk in the door. I'm going to put the hanger that says do not disturb on my door. I'm going to close my door. I'm going to sit down at my desk, pull my computer out, set it in front of me, open it up, have my CRM ready to go, put my headphones in, and start dialing, right? So we're stacking everything up. So again, motivation is overrated because I can be super motivated on my way in here, but if my cues that I've created around when I walk into the office, it's like, oh, well, so-and-so sitting over there and I really need to go talk to them about this thing. And, I sat down and my computer opened up and I had my email up and I had to answer a bunch of emails and like on and on and on down the rabbit hole. But instead, what can we do to habit stack to get motivated in a way that is motivated by our environment? And that's really what he's talking about here. So chapter 7 is about the secret to self-control. So the inversion of the first law of behavior change is to make it invisible. So once a habit's been formed, it's unlikely to be forgotten. Again, if we go back to our example we just used, whatever your habit is around lead generation and walking into the office now, it's going to be really difficult to overcome that unless you start to form new habits, right? And we'll walk through all the 4 laws of behavior change that will help you to do that. But people with high self-control tend to spend less time in tempting situations. It's easier to avoid temptation than to resist it. So the secret to self-control is not gritting your teeth and making it and just saying, I'm just going to do it. It's to take the old habits that tend to sway you in the direction that you don't want to go and make those things invisible, right? So spend less time in tempting situations. If you're tempted when you walk into the office to go to someone else's office and chit chat, like, don't do that, right? Just try to eliminate that. And again, what it says here is one of the most practical ways to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that causes it, right? So if your cue is, I see an open door down the hallway, then just don't go down that way, right? Or, you can be as extreme as you want as to say like, hey, when I walk in, I'm just going to walk in like this, and just walk by everybody's office and then go do what I need to do. But the practical ways to eliminate a bad habit, just reduce exposure to whatever the cue is that causes that bad behavior. And then this was really interesting. I thought self-control is a short-term strategy and not a long-term one. Self-control will help you in the moment, but what's going to help you long-term is, again, that same concept that we talked about earlier with building continuous small, again, the name of the book is Atomic Habits, and that's on purpose, right? Small habits that will build you up over the long term that will have that compounding effect. So first law of behavior change, make it obvious. Second law of behavior change is to make it attractive, right? So make it attractive, make the habit irresistible, right? Habits are dopamine driven feedback loops. So when dopamine rises, so does our motivation to act. Now, I'll give you a perfect example of this and of the next little thing that I have here. I have a friend of mine who we were talking about this dopamine feedback loop thing just a couple of weeks ago. And what he said is it's really interesting that when he tells his kids, hey, we're going to go out for donuts, they get super excited, right? They get that dopamine hit. Yep, we're going to get donuts. Then the dopamine gets released. We get all these happy hormones. Everybody's super excited. They get to the donut shop and eat a donut, and what happens? Everything goes away, and they get this like tired, almost depressed feeling, right? It's the anticipation of a reward and not necessarily the fulfillment of it that gets us to take action. The greater the anticipation, the greater the dopamine spike. So you can look on Instagram, you can Google all these things about dopamine hacks and all this sort of stuff. But the fact still remains that habits help us hit those little dopamine spikes throughout our day, right? So the anticipation of a reward, not the fulfillment of it, is what gets us to take action. Temptation bundling is one way to make your habits more attractive. So what you want to try to do is to pair an action that you want to do with an action that you need to do, right? So this would be the same thing as it relates to lead generation, since we're sort of on that vein, right? So The action that you need to do is you need to pick up the phone and you need to call. But what is an action that you want to do as it relates to lead generation? And that's going to be different for everybody, right? What do you want to do and what do you need to do? Well, you need to lead generate. You need to go in the office and habit stack these things so that at 9 a.m. or whatever it is time that you choose to do lead generation, what's your habit stack look like to sit down and actually do that, right? And what is it that you want to do in that moment? So make a habit irresistible. Second law is to make it attractive. And then chapter 9, this is super intriguing, right? Very intriguing to me because it talks about this whole idea of community, right? So the culture we live in determines which behaviors are attractive to us. So if you want to see behaviors that are attractive to you, do yourself a favor. If you're not in a culture where those sorts of behaviors are the norm, then my recommendation to you would be, and my encouragement would be, to get out of that culture, right? One of the things that we trumpet at KW is this whole idea of, oh, our culture is amazing, right? And it's true, our culture really is amazing. Please use the culture to your advantage, right? We tend to adopt habits that are praised and approved by our culture because we have a strong desire to fit in and belong to the tribe. So if we're in a culture that promotes, caring, sharing, that promotes this idea of building big businesses and doing that through lead generation and those sorts of things, the best thing that we can do is to be a part of that culture, right? So at this third point, one of the most effective things you can do to build better habits is to join a culture where, one, your desired behavior is the normal behavior, and two, you already have something in common with the group. So if your desired behavior is to lead generate, guess what? You're in a great place, because hopefully the people that you hang around with at the office, that's their normal behavior, right? The normal behavior is, hey, I'm setting up a bunker, I'm lead generating, leave me alone. And at 11 o'clock when I'm done, then we can chat or do whatever, right? But join a culture where the desired behavior is the normal behavior, and you've already got something in common with the group, right? You've got something in common with the group here. We're all realtors and we're all trying to build businesses, and we're all small business owners. So the normal behavior of the tribe will often overpower the desired behavior of the individual, right? Most days we'd rather be wrong with the crowd than be right by ourselves. So whatever the normal behavior is for those people that come to the office and sit and do lead generation and do the things that are necessary to be successful in this business, will overpower whatever we typically want to do behavior-wise. If a behavior can get us approval, respect, and praise, we find that attractive. So that's why we try to, as much as we can, our leadership team is great at shouting out the people that are doing those behaviors that we all strive to, right? So if a behavior can get us that approval, that respect, and that praise, we find those behaviors attractive. So the role of your community, the role of your family, the role of your friends definitely has a great effect on shaping our habits. And so I thought that chapter was really interesting, just talking about community. So here's the inversion, right? So how to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. All right, the inversion is to make it unattractive. Every behavior has a surface level craving and a deeper underlying motive. So think about the cookies again, for example, right? Every behavior has a surface level craving. Well, my craving right then is I want more chocolate. All right, but what's the deeper underlying motive there? Well, it could be a host of different things. It could be, I'm eating this because, I'm trying to get back at my spouse because they said a mean comment to me or something like that. And I know that they hate it when I eat more than one cookie. I don't know. But every behavior, surface level craving, and a deeper underlying motive. So a surface level craving for lead generation may be, well, I need to do this because I think that that's just what successful real estate agents do. The deeper underlying motive may be your big why, right? So highlight the benefits of avoiding a bad habit to make it seem unattractive. So if you've got a bad habit that you continually do, what are the benefits of not doing that thing, right? And highlight those, right? So if it's, I want to stop smoking, right? What are the benefits of stopping smoking, right? Better health would be one, right? And so on and so forth. So what are we doing to highlight the benefits of avoiding a bad habit? And then habits are attractive when we associate them with positive feelings, and unattractive when we associate them with negative feelings. Create a motivation ritual by doing something you enjoy immediately before a difficult habit. And I thought this was really interesting, this whole idea of a motivation ritual, right? So if you're going in and doing something that you dread doing, right? Or maybe it's just a difficult habit that's just difficult from a sense of, from a functionary standpoint, do something that you enjoy right before, right? Go ahead and get the dopamine hit, do something that you enjoy to help push you through to the difficult habit. So, so make it attractive, right? Second law of behavior change, make it attractive. And the inversion of that is make it unattractive. Chapter 11, walk slowly, but never backward. The third law of behavior change is make it easy. Make it easy, right? The most effective form of learning is practice and not planning. We all know this to be a fact, right? We can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan all day long, but if we don't actually practice it, if we don't fail, it's going to be really difficult for us to learn. Focus on taking action and not being in motion, right? I've seen this a lot. Movement does not equal movement. Just because you're moving doesn't mean you're successful, right? Just coming into the office and sitting at your desk, just being in the office doesn't automatically make you a successful realtor, right? So take action. Don't just come and look like you're doing a bunch of stuff. You could just be sitting here watching YouTube videos all day and look like you're working, but you're not going to sell houses that way. Habit formation is the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition. I thought his next point was really interesting. The amount of time you've been performing a habit is not as important as the number of times you've performed it, right? So think about this in the most simplest of ways. I could brush my teeth for an hour at a time every single day, but that's not nearly as important as doing it daily and having the number of times that I've done it, right? So the more times you do it, the more times it's ingrained into your brain. That's what's going to get you moving in the right direction, as opposed to, well, I did this thing for 2 hours and the next day it didn't happen, right? Well, it's because it's the amount of times you've been performing it that's the most important. It's the number of times you've been doing it that's more important, not the amount of time that you've done it. Chapter 12, the law of least effort. So human behavior follows the law of least effort, right? We naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. That's just human nature. And so the goal is, as we talked about before, is creating an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible, right? Make it as easy as possible. Reduce the friction associated with good behaviors. When the friction is low, the habits are easy, and it's the same with bad behaviors. You increase the friction associated with bad behaviors so that when the friction is high, the habits are difficult. So creating an environment where doing the right things is key to all of this. So again, if we go back to our walking into the office and lead generation, we have to create an environment where doing that thing is really easy. Right. So if we have the door hanger, if we have, all distractions set aside, and we create that bunker, and we create that environment where picking up the phone is as easy as possible. And the best way to do that is to just, again, do the habit scorecard. Walk into the office and start writing down what it is you do when you walk in. Right. So maybe it's, I walk into the office, I sit down, I get my computer out of my bag, I open it up. Then as soon as I open it up, I walk over to the coffee machine and grab a cup of coffee. Right. Just start notating all this stuff down. Because again, if we can make it as easy as possible, that's what's going to help start the habit. right? Not sitting down and grinning or gritting our teeth and saying, I'm creating a new habit today, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to do it, right? It doesn't work that way. So if we can continually decrease the friction, right? So maybe you write down, I get a cup of coffee. Well, to me, that's a distraction. You've already opened your computer up, just start dialing, as opposed to, okay, my new habit needs to be when I walk in the door, I go straight to the coffee maker, get my cup of coffee, then go to my office and start all the things, right? But you won't know what your habits are and how to start to change them unless you're writing them down, and you take a week or so to just write all those things down. Then you can take inventory of what you need to do and then create a plan from that point. And it says prime your environment to make future actions easier. All right. This was one of the most amazing chapters in the book to me. How to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. So habits can be completed in a few seconds, but continue to impact your behavior for minutes or hours afterwards. Many habits occur at decisive moments, kind of like a fork in the road, and either send you in the direction of a productive day or an unproductive one. So I know I can probably speak for all of us to say that we've all had days where we've made one decision that literally either derailed us all day or put us, on the path to having a super successful day. So the 2-minute rule states that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do so. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Now, this is really interesting because I've heard too, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this as well, that if you get to a certain point in time in your day and you need to do something, if it takes less than 5 minutes to do, just do it then. Like, that's a great habit, right? That's a great habit to start. Start the habit of, if something takes less than 5 minutes to do, just do it right then. Like, don't wait. Because I do this myself too, is I'll think about something randomly during the day when I'm in the middle of something else, and I'll write it down. But that thing that I thought about, it takes less than 5 minutes to do. Like, just pause what you're doing. Maybe you're in the middle of a 3-hour project. Just pause what you're doing. Take a mental break from that. Do the 5-minute thing, right? Then it's off your plate, and you don't have to spend more mental energy later to try to do it then. So it's the same thing with habits, right? You're wanting to decrease the friction as much as possible. So when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's a great point. Standardize before you optimize. This is so huge, right? You can't improve a habit that doesn't exist. So I think so often we sit here and we try to create new habits, and we're like, okay, this is the habit that I want to start, but let me sit here and literally write down all the things that I need to be doing before I start that habit. Or if I want to start the habit, let me optimize it as much as possible before I start it. No, just start it. Like, be in action and then worry about trying to optimize it later, right? When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Yeah, maybe, but sometimes just starting is the best thing that you can do, right? It's just to start over and over and over again. One of the biggest things that I heard that just came to mind was one of the things that we do with our kids, right? If you want, let's say you wanted to start something new with your kids, right? You want to start reading them bedtime stories. You want to start, like whatever it is, reading with them at night, praying with them at night, whatever it is that you want to do with your kids. One of the encouragements to me early on in that process was, you have kids. Some days you're not going to be able to do the thing that you want to do. It's just not going to happen because of time constraints, of a kid being, ornery or obstinate or whatever. It's just not going to happen. And so instead of getting frustrated, just keep starting. Keep starting. So don't let your inability to keep a habit going stop you from doing the habit altogether. He'll get to that later, but I wanted to interject that now. So chapter 14, how to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. So the inversion of, the third law, make it easy, is obviously make it difficult. The ultimate way to lock in future behavior is to automate your habits. Now, you can do this in a lot of different ways. Technology helps, but let's say like one-time choices. like buying a better mattress or enrolling in some sort of an automatic saving plans. They're single actions, but they automate your future habits and deliver increasing returns over time. So, so for example, I really want to save more. That needs to be a habit, right? So every time I want to save, I have to, okay, I got a commission check. I need to make sure that I put some money aside for taxes or whatever, right? Find a way to automate that so that when it hits your account, some of that money sweeps over into another account automatically. You do that one time, then you don't have to worry about it. That's a habit that you've automated. So it's out of sight, out of mind. It just happens, right? And using technology to automate your habits is the most reliable and effective way to guarantee the right behavior. So chapter 15, the cardinal rule of behavior change. So the fourth law of behavior change is to make it satisfying. We're more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience is satisfying, right? So the cardinal rule is what is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished is avoided. Now, to get a habit to stick, you need to feel immediately successful, even if it's in a small way. So what can we do to make it satisfying, right? We talked about this way earlier, I believe, when it talked about the feedback loop, right? So cue, craving, response, and reward, right? So we're talking about the reward right now. If I can get back to it. So make it satisfying. And what's really interesting, if you think about it, the first three laws of behavior change, so make it obvious, attractive, and easy, increase the odds that the behavior is going to be performed this time. The fourth law, make it satisfying, increases the odds that a behavior will be repeated again. So if we make it satisfying, if we give ourselves some sort of reward for doing it, even if it's a small thing, that's how we're going to get the habit to stick. So make it satisfying. And then chapter 16 is how to stick with good habits every day. So one of the most satisfying feelings is the feeling of making progress. We talked about at the very beginning that we just want to be 1% better than we were the day before. And the only way to really do that and to know that we're making progress is to have some sort of a habit tracker or some sort of visual form of measurement, right? So I'm going to share my my email after we're all done in the chat. If you guys want to email me, I can email you a copy of a habit tracker that someone gave me earlier today that I think is really amazing, right? That's the only way that you're going to know if you're making progress, and making progress is one way to make it satisfying. But here's the rub. Don't break the chain, right? Try to keep the habit alive. And if you do miss, just again, keep starting, right? Just try to get back on track as soon as you can. And that's the whole thing that I talked about just a second ago. Just because you can measure something doesn't mean that it's the most important thing. Right? And I thought that was a really great comment. You can track all sorts of things, right? You can track, and I'm thinking just in this particular case, just because you can track your weight, if you're in a weight loss program, doesn't necessarily mean that the number on the scale is the most important thing. Maybe the most important thing is how you feel, right? Whether or not you can walk up, a set of stairs without huffing and puffing when you get up to the top of the stairs, right? So don't break the chain, like stick with it and get yourself a habit tracker. If you need one, I have one. I'll send it to you happily. And just write down the things that you really want to start tracking so that you can make that satisfying. You can have the satisfaction of knowing, hey, you know what? I really can do this. I really can take a month, 5 days a week and lead generate for 2 hours a day. And oh, by the way, when I did that, my business went crazy, right? So that's one way to make sure that gets done. Carol, I will get you that tracker, dear. Let me just put my email in the chat box right now. Feel free to email me and I'll get it to you. Chapter 17, you guys are going to love this. How an accountability partner can change everything. So the inversion of the fourth law of behavior changes make it unsatisfying. So we're less likely to repeat a bad habit if it's painful or unsatisfying. An accountability partner can create an immediate cost to inaction, which if you've ever had some sort of accountability, that that cost. We care deeply about what others think about us, and we do not want others to have a lesser opinion of us. I have a coaching client right now. He's on this call. I love him to death. But we've created an accountability plan. And if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, there's a cost. There's to that. It's a painful cost, right? I love what he says next. A habit contract can be used to add a social cost to any behavior. It makes the cost of violating your promises public and painful, right? I'm not, all about creating pain in people's lives, but I do understand the concept of, hey, I've asked you to do something, you've agreed to do it. If you don't do it, and I make my clients name the cost, I make them name the pain, right? If you don't do this, what are you going to do? How is it going to be painful for you, right? Another one of my coaching clients, bless his heart, he says, hey, I want to be at the office at 9 a.m. every day. And I looked at him and I said, okay, what's the cost? If you don't come in at 9 a.m., what are you going to do? And so the thing that we landed on is he has to buy me lunch on the day that he doesn't show up at 9 o'clock. And those free lunches to me are really yummy and they're really painful for him. So what can you do to make those, make the cost of violating those things public and painful? And then knowing that someone else is watching you can be a powerful motivator. Now, it doesn't have to be somebody at the office. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's one of your kids. Whatever it takes to make the cost of not doing it painful enough to make sure that you follow through with it. That can be a really, really powerful thing. So then that was sort of the end of his 4 laws of behavior change. And he kind of goes into a couple of other little things. Chapter 18, the truth about talent, when genes matter, when they don't. The secret to maximizing your odds of success is to choose the right field of competition, right? For some people, real estate may not be their field of competition, right? One of the things I was reading another book, and maybe we'll do a reverse book club on that book at some other time. But one of the biggest questions that he asks the readers was, if you get to the end of your week and it's 7 o'clock on a Friday night, you're pouring yourself a drink, you're relaxing on the couch, and you are super happy about the successful work week and the work that you did, what work are you celebrating? Right. And in the story that he was telling, where someone asked someone else that question, it was like a light bulb moment for them, where they realized, hey, I'm in the wrong business, right? I'm on the wrong field, to use Clear's analogy here, of competition, right? So think about that just in your own journey. If I'm celebrating success, what does that look like? So then you pick the right habit when you're on the right field of competition, and progress is super easy. You pick the wrong habit and life is a struggle. And we all know that, right? We all know that life can be a struggle if we choose to have bad habits, right? Habits are easier when they align with our natural abilities. So if we're choosing habits that best suit us and our natural abilities, life is going to go a lot easier. And I love this last thing: play a game that favors your strengths. If you can't find a game that favors you, create one. So a lot of us, that have been in the business for a while, it's all about lead generation, is all about making calls, right? We make calls, do these things. But what if making calls doesn't favor me? What if I don't like making calls? Or what if I'm terrible on the phone, or whatever? Some people would say, well, hey, figure it out, man, script and role play and get comfortable doing it. Well, I don't agree with that. And here's why. Find a game. If you can't find a game that favors you, create one. Figure out a lead generation strategy that works for you, that you're doing something that you enjoy doing, right? You guys have all, maybe you haven't, but maybe some of you have heard about Jason Abrams and his class, Triple Your Business and Love Your Life. What is it that you enjoy doing? And then invite people to do it with you and use that as a lead generation strategy. If you can't find a game that favors you, if calling FSBOs and calling expires doesn't favor you, then do something that does, and invite people into that and make it a natural part of your day, right? Make that a natural part of what you do, right? Play the game that favors to your strengths, not to your weaknesses. All right, chapter 19, the Goldilocks rule, and we're almost done. How to stay motivated in life and work. The Goldilocks rule states that humans experience peak motivation when you work on a task that's right on the edge of your current abilities. Right, so find a task when you're working on it that just gets you to the edge, right? Of I can almost not do this thing, but I'm also not super bored doing this thing, right? The greatest threat to success is not failure, it's boredom, right? As habits become routine, they become less and less satisfying and less interesting, and we start to get bored. So the thing that is separated, I have noticed in my career, the thing that separates the really successful real estate agents to those that aren't super successful is their ability to work when it's not exciting. Right? Here's a secret. You can all write this down. Success is boring. It is. Like, to be successful, it's boring. It's hey, I have to come in and I do the same thing every single day. My habits are the same every single day. But what separates the good agents from the really, really great agents is their ability to keep going when it's not super exciting. And we've all heard Gary Keller say that selling real estate is not about, it's not about that real estate is not about selling houses, right? It's not about selling real estate. It's about following a schedule. Listen to what he just says. Professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way. Now, there's all these other books that talk about the whirlwind and talk about what we need to do when things are going crazy around us. Are you going to be a professional that says, hey, you know what? Like, I don't really care what's going on and how the whirlwind is swirling around me. I'm just going to follow my schedule, right? If you follow your schedule, guess what? You're going to sell a lot of real estate. If you have good habits, guess what? You're going to sell a lot of real estate. But don't let life continue to get in the way. And the last chapter, the downside of creating good habits. So the upside of habits, we can do things without thinking about it. But the downside is that we stop paying attention to the little errors. And so again, what he's hearkening back to is he's saying, hey, you need to, at different points and intervals in your life, get your habit scorecard back out. Go through them again to make sure that you're not missing anything or making an error, right? Habits and deliberate practice equal mastery. We've talked about this before in some of these classes that we've done. You guys have heard about this, that it takes 10,000 hours worth of doing something to be a master at it. That's true. What happens is, as you create a new habit, you have to continue to practice that habit to get to mastery of that thing. You don't just arrive one day and it's just, oh, you know what? I've done this habit. I've brushed my teeth for a whole year now, and now I'm good, right? Or I've lead generated for a whole year and now I'm good. No, what happens when you stop lead generating is your income does this, right? We all know that. But it's deliberately doing those habits over and over again that will lead eventually to mastery. And then just what I said a second ago, reflection and review is a process that allows you to remain conscious of your performance over time. And then the last thing I'll leave you guys with is the last thing that he says, is he says, the tighter we cling to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. So we've already talked about how important it is to identify with something and use that as your decision-making paradigm, right? So if I want to be a successful real estate agent, what are the things that I need to do? But the tighter we cling to that identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. So maybe my eventual goal one day is to be, is to be the CEO of a large real estate team. Well, that person's identity is different than just being a real estate agent, right? And we'll never get to that level if we don't, at some points in time, at regular intervals, stop and reflect and review what we're doing now, so that we can continue to grow even beyond the things that we're trying to do and become now. So you guys have my email. Thanks for hanging around with me for this long. If you need anything, if you want to talk more about this, please let me know. Please just go get the book. This has been one of the best books that I've read probably in my entire life as it relates to business. I even had someone else tell me that today, that they were super excited about listening to this again they already read the book, but it's one of the books that's probably revolutionized their life more than anything else. So, so if you need anything, you want to talk about this more, I'm always available. I'm always here to help. My email's in the chat. If you want any sort of the habit tracker, he also has another sort of like a cheat sheet kind of thing that I can send to you as well. But yeah, does anybody have any crazy questions before we hop off of here? No. All right, awesome. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. If you need anything, give me a holler.
Thank you, Wesley. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Yep, my privilege. See you soon.
Yeah.